It was a cold night, and rain fell softly on the roof of the small human outpost. Private J sat near the fire, rubbing his hands, trying to stay warm. He was alone in the front station of Sector 9. A forgotten part of the galaxy. Nothing ever happened here. Just snow, wind, and silence. But tonight felt different. The sensors were acting strange, blinking without reason. He checked twice. No life signs, no enemy ships, nothing. Then came the knock. A soft, slow knock on the metal door. 3 times, like someone too weak to knock louder. Jay stood up quickly, hand on his sidearm. He wasn't expecting visitors, no patrols, no allies, no cargo drops. And this was no place for jokes or surprise guests. He approached the door with caution. "Identify yourself," he said through the intercom. No answer. Just the sound of wind outside. Then the knock again. 3 slow hits. Jace took a deep breath and opened the door halfway. Cold air rushed in, and standing there was something strange. She looked like a girl, but her ears were long and pointed. Her skin was soft gray, and her eyes were large and glowing. She was shaking from the cold, wearing torn clothes. Her arms were around her chest, like she was trying to hold herself together. Jace didn't move at first. The girl didn't speak. She just looked up at him with tired, glassy eyes and whispered, "Please, I don't want to die." Jace pulled her in before he could even think. She collapsed in his arms, almost weightless. Her body was ice cold, and he could feel her bones. He closed the door fast and laid her near the fire. "Hey, stay with me," he said, gently shaking her shoulder. She winced but didn't resist. He grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around her. Then he poured hot water into a metal cup and held it to her lips. She sipped slowly, her hands trembling. For a while, there was only silence between them. Her breathing steadied, but her body kept shivering. Jace noticed something odd. Her legs were shaped strangely, almost like a wolf's, but not wild, not beastly, just different. And behind her, under the blanket, a small fluffy tail flicked weakly. "What are you?" he asked softly, not in fear, but in confusion. She looked at him with those glowing eyes and replied, "I'm Kiri, from the planet Varn." Then she looked away. "I didn't mean to come here. It was an accident." Jace frowned. Varn was a destroyed world, burned in the last war. He remembered the reports. No survivors, no escapees. The place was left to rot. "How did you survive?" he asked, voice low. Kiri pulled the blanket tighter and shook her head. "I was kept in a lab. They called me a sample. Then the base exploded, and I ran. I stole a pod and crashed here." Jace didn't speak for a moment. Her story sounded insane, but her eyes, they were full of pain, real pain, the kind that didn't lie. She slowly sat up. Her ears twitched at every sound, alert, like an animal that's always hunted. But her face was soft, almost kind. "I didn't come to hurt you," she said quietly. "I just wanted to feel warm again, to sleep without fear." Jace nodded slowly, still watching her. He didn't fully understand what she was, but something inside him whispered she was not a threat. She was just a scared soul looking for safety. Still, he had rules, orders. If command found out, they'd take her away, study her, maybe worse. But as he looked at her again, small, shivering, and trying so hard to stay awake, he made a silent decision. "You can stay here," he said finally. "Just for the night." Kiri's eyes widened, and for the first time, she gave a weak smile. "Thank you, human," she whispered. "You're different." Jace gave a small nod and turned to check the sensors again. But deep down, he already knew. His quiet outpost life had just ended, and this strange visitor was going to change everything. Jace didn't sleep that night. He sat in the corner of the room, watching the strange girl sleep by the fire, her tail curled around her legs, her chest rising and falling softly. She looked peaceful, but his mind was not. Who was she really? What did she mean by sample? And how had she survived the destruction of Varn? As the fire crackled, Jace ran a quick scan using his wristpad. The results came back in red. Unknown species. DNA, unstable hybrid. Hybrid with what? Before he could dig deeper, Kiri's ears twitched. She slowly opened her eyes, then sat up with unnatural grace. Her movements were smooth. Too smooth. She stretched like a feline, then looked at Jace. "Are you still watching me, human?" she asked with a sleepy smile. Jace cleared his throat. "Just making sure you didn't disappear on me," he replied, trying to stay calm. "I won't run," she said softly, "unless you try to cage me." Her voice carried a strange echo now, like two tones in one. It sent a chill down his spine. "What, are you really?" he asked, standing up slowly. She tilted her head, the smile fading. "I don't fully know," she said after a pause. "They changed me, mixed my blood with animals. With other races, they wanted something new, something they could control." Jace frowned. "Who are they?" "The Dominion," she said, spitting the word like poison. "They took girls from Varn and other worlds, used us for tests, pain, and breeding programs." Jace felt his stomach twist. The Dominion was a name buried in secret files. A rogue science faction banned across galaxies. If what she said was true, she was lucky to be alive. Kiri stood up, the blanket falling from her shoulders. Jace's breath caught. Her skin was covered in faint, glowing lines like energy veins. Her back had two small bumps near the shoulder blades, not wings, not weapons, but something waiting to grow. "Don't worry," she said softly, noticing his stare. "I'm not dangerous. Unless someone makes me feel hunted." Jace nodded slowly, trying to understand. "Why come to me? Why not hide in the wilds?" She looked straight into his eyes. "Because you left your door open," she whispered, "and your heart even more." He didn't know what to say. A long silence filled the room, only broken by the soft hum of the power core. Then Kiri turned and walked to the window. The storm had stopped outside. Snow covered everything in white silence. "I'm not just some broken creature," she said. "I feel things. I remember pain, and now I just want to belong somewhere." Jay stepped beside her. "You think this old base is where you belong?" She smiled again, but this time it was sad. "No, but it's the first place that didn't chain me, didn't stare like I'm a monster," he sighed, rubbing his eyes. "I can't promise the world, Kiri, but I'll protect you while you're here." Her eyes glowed brighter. "That's all I needed to hear." Suddenly, an alarm rang from the console. Unidentified craft detected inbound 1 minute away. Jace rushed to the panel. A small ship was landing nearby, not Dominion, but not friendly either. Private contractor scavengers, or worse, bounty hunters. Kiri's ears flattened. "They found me," she whispered. "They'll kill you for hiding me." Jace grabbed his rifle and handed her a second one. "Then we don't let them in," he said firmly. Kiri hesitated, then took the weapon. For a moment, the hybrid girl looked like a true warrior. Jace felt something shift inside him. This was no ordinary girl. She was something new. Something the galaxy wasn't ready for, and she was standing with him. As the engines roared outside and the shadows of men approached, Jace whispered to her, "Let's see what you're really made of." Kiri grinned, her fangs showing for the first time. "You're about to find out, human." The snow exploded as the enemy ship landed. Jace and Kiri watched from the shadows of the outpost's main hall. The craft was sleek, black, and built for fast strikes, not diplomacy. Its engines melted the ice around it, and steam rose like ghosts in the air. Jace tightened his grip on his rifle. Kiri stood beside him, silent, alert, tail slowly swaying. Her glowing eyes reflected the red emergency lights. She didn't look like a helpless girl anymore. The door of the enemy ship opened with a hiss. 3 figures stepped out, all wearing dark armor. Their helmets had no faceplates, just one red line glowing across. Kiri's ears twitched. "Trackers," she said quietly. "They're not just here to take me back. They're here to erase any trace I ever existed." Jace felt a mix of anger and fear rise in his chest. This wasn't just a mission anymore. This was war, personal and unfair. He moved quickly, whispering, "Back corridor leads to the upper ridge. We can snipe from there." But Kiri didn't move. She was staring out the window. Body tense, muscles ready. Her claws had quietly pushed out of her fingers, sleek, sharp, and natural looking. "I'll go out there," she said. "They won't expect it." Jace turned to her, shocked. "Are you insane? You'll be shot before you say a word." But her voice was calm. "They trained me to run, yes, but before that, they trained me to kill." Jace hesitated, then slowly nodded. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "Just signal if you need cover." Kiri gave him a small, determined look, then moved toward the back exit. Her steps made no sound, even on the metal floor. Outside, the wind howled again. The snow had turned into flurries, making visibility low. A perfect cover, if you knew how to use it. The 3 trackers scanned the area. One of them tapped a scanner. "No heat signatures," he said. "Target may be dead from cold." But another raised his hand. "No. The door was recently opened. She's here." Then, without warning, a figure leapt from the snowy side path. It was Kiri, moving like a blur. She landed on one of the men, knocking him flat with a thud. Before he could scream, her claws cut through his armor, clean and precise. The other 2 shouted and opened fire. Red plasma bolts lit up the white snow. Kiri rolled and leapt again, faster than they could aim. One bolt grazed her shoulder, but she didn't even cry out. Jace opened fire from above. He hit the second tracker in the leg. The enemy screamed and dropped his rifle. Jace didn't stop. He fired again, this time at the weapon, destroying it. The last tracker turned to run back to the ship, but Kiri was already there. She jumped onto the ship's ramp and kicked the man backward into the snow. He landed hard, and Kiri stood over him. He begged, Don't kill me. I'm just following orders." Kiri stared at him, her claws ready, her face unreadable. Then softly she said, "That's what the scientists said too. That's what the guards whispered when they locked my cage." And she struck. It was over. In seconds, Jace came down from the ridge, his boots crunching the snow. He looked at her. She was breathing hard, blood on her claws. Her shoulder burned but not bleeding much. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "They'll send more," she said. "They never stop." "Then we don't stop either," Jace replied. "We prepare. You're not some experiment anymore, Kiri. You're alive, and you have a right to fight back." Kiri looked at him, eyes filled with something new. Not fear, not anger, but hope. Then the tracker's ship beeped an incoming signal. Kiri turned to Jace and said, "They've already called for backup." Jace smirked. "Let them come." Then he added, "This time, they'll learn what happens when humans protect something worth fighting for." Kiri looked at the snow around them, then back at him, and for the first time, she whispered with a soft smile, "You really are different, human." The outpost was silent again, but the silence felt heavy now, like something waiting to break. Jace walked slowly around the bodies in the snow. The 3 trackers from the dark ship were gone, dead. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like the beginning. Inside, Kiri sat by the wall, pressing cloth against the burn on her shoulder. Her body healed fast, but her eyes looked far away, like her mind was still in another place. Jace crouched beside her. "You okay?" She didn't answer at first. Then she whispered, "They sent the low-level hunters first. The real ones come next. The ones who don't speak, only kill." Jace stood up and slammed his fist into the table. "Then we prepare. We can't run, not in this weather, and I'm not leaving you here to face them alone." Kiri looked at him with wide eyes. "No one ever said that to me before," she said. "They always said, 'You're too dangerous,' or 'You're not real.'" Jace gave a half smile. "Well, to me you're real. You bleed, you fight, and you made me coffee," he added. Trying to lighten the mood, she gave a small laugh. The first one he had heard from her. It was soft and awkward, like someone who forgot how to smile. Then came the noise. A long, deep hum from above. They both ran to the window, and there it was, hovering in the sky like a black stingray, a heavy Dominion dropship, big enough to carry a dozen elite hunters. It didn't land, it just stayed in the clouds, watching, scanning, waiting. "They're measuring the area," Kiri whispered. "They'll hit the whole station if they find me." Jace turned to her. "Then let's make sure they don't, together." They moved fast. Jace handed her one of the old base cloaking modules. It flickered but still worked. She strapped it on, and her body shimmered. Not fully invisible, but hard to see if you didn't know where to look. Then they split up, Jace to the roof, Kiri to the snow. The sky darkened as the ship dropped metal pods into the forest beyond. Each pod hit the ground with a hiss, releasing soldiers, tall, faceless, and moving without sound. Their suits absorbed light. Their boots left no prints. But Kiri could smell them. She moved between trees like a ghost, her tail brushing against bark, her claws gliding over branches. One hunter came too close and vanished with a soft thud and a flash of claws. Meanwhile, Jace watched through the sniper scope. He fired only when needed clean shots, never. Twice, he had trained for war, but this was survival. The base lights flickered. The Dominion had hacked the power grid. Soon, the entire outpost would shut down. Kiri returned with scratches on her face and blood on her hands. "They're adapting," she said, panting. "They know how I move. They're not just soldiers. They're machines inside." Jace looked her in the eyes. "Then we hit them with something they don't expect." He pointed to a sealed storage room in the back. "Old mining charges, powerful, unstable. We wire them along the ridge and lead the enemy straight through." Kiri blinked. "Surprised you'd blow up your own station?" Jace shrugged. "Was never really home to me, but you remind me what home should feel like." She froze. That one sentence, simple, soft, shook her more than any weapon. No one had ever said she was worth anything, let alone home. They placed the charges, linked them to his wristpad, then waited. The snow fell harder, covering everything. And when the black-armored hunters came again, this time as a group, Jace and Kiri didn't hide. They ran just fast enough to be seen, just loud enough to draw them in. The chase led across the snowy field to the rocky ridge. Kiri turned sharply, leapt onto a tree branch. Jace slid behind a rock and watched his pad. 5 enemies, now 7. 9, all inside the blast zone. He looked up once, saw Kiri perched above. Breathing hard, she nodded at him. He pressed the trigger. The ground shook. Fire lit up the white snow. A wave of heat and sound crashed through the trees, then silence. Again, when it cleared, the ridge was gone, so were the hunters. Jace limped over the rubble. Kiri met him halfway. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen, but she was smiling. "You did it," she said. "No," Jace replied. "We did it." And for the first time in her life, Kiri believed that maybe she was something worth fighting for. The snow didn't fall anymore. Instead, smoke rose from the broken ridge where the hunters had died. The sky above was gray and silent, but inside the outpost, the silence was louder, heavier. Kiri sat on a broken crate. Her hands were stained with blood, not just enemy blood, but her own. Her shoulder was bandaged with torn cloth and thermal gel. The pain didn't bother her. It was the quiet that hurt. Jace walked in slowly, holding a metal can of clean water. He placed it beside her and sat down without saying anything. They didn't talk for a long time. There were no words big enough for what had just happened. 9 bodies, 1 destroyed base, and the truth between them still unspoken. Finally, Jace spoke. "They'll come again," he said. "Even stronger this time," Kiri nodded. "They'll never stop to them. I'm not a person. I'm just an asset. Something broken they want back." Jace turned his eyes toward the fire. "You're not broken," he said, almost like he was reminding himself too. "You fought harder than anyone I've seen." Kiri looked at her claws. "They made me to fight," she said softly. "But I never wanted to. I wanted to run in the forests of Varn. I wanted to swim in the ice rivers with my sister. Her voice cracked. Jace looked over, and her eyes were full of tears. But she didn't let them fall. She didn't make it, Kiri whispered. They killed her during one of the tests. They said she was too soft. Jace closed his fists. Every story she told made his blood boil, not because of what they did to her, but because she had survived it all and still carried warmth in her heart. He stood up and walked toward the control panel. The screens flickered weakly. Only one antenna still worked. He turned it on and began typing. Kiri watched. What are you doing? Sending a message, he replied. Not to command, but to someone I trust, someone who owes me their life. She raised an eyebrow. You trust someone out there? Jace nodded slowly. He was like a brother to me during the war. Now he runs a rogue ship big, fast off the radar. Kiri looked unsure. What if he turns me in for credits? He won't, Jace said firmly. He knows what it feels. Like to be hunted, to be treated like a weapon, not a man. The message was short and encrypted. Need pickup. Cargo is alive and important. Dangerous enemies involved. Jace out. He pressed send, then sat beside her again. If he comes, Jace said, we leave this place. Go somewhere far, maybe even a forgotten moon. Somewhere warm, somewhere free. Kiri looked down. You'd leave your post? Jace looked around the damaged room. Half the walls were burned, the sensors offline, the food storage wrecked. I think my post left me, he replied with a sad laugh. That night, Kiri dreamed for the first time in years, not of cages or needles, but of running through tall purple grass, her sister laughing, the wind carrying songs instead of sirens. She woke up with tears on her cheeks, and the soft beep of a return signal blinking on Jace's wristpad. He looked at it with tired eyes, then smiled. He's coming, Itichia. 6 hours. Kiri's heart jumped, but along with the hope came fear. What if it's a trap? What if they intercept him? Jace met her eyes. Then we fight again. But this time, we're not just surviving, we're escaping. We're choosing peace, Kiri nodded slowly. She had been trained to kill, modified to obey, taught never to feel. But now, she felt everything. She touched her chest and whispered, is this what peace costs? Jace heard her and replied softly, yes. It costs pain, it costs blood, but if we make it out, it's worth everything. Outside, the wind changed direction, as if the world itself knew something rare was about to happen. A second chance. The outpost was quiet, but the kind of quiet that warned of a coming storm. Jace sat on the roof, his sniper rifle across his lap. Snow had stopped falling. The clouds had broken apart, showing small pieces of a star-filled sky, far away. Too small for the eye, but not for the heart. A ship was coming. Kiri stood behind him, arms crossed, watching the horizon. Her wounds were healing quickly, but some things, like memories, didn't heal the same way. She stepped closer. You trust this man, she said. Why? Jace didn't look at her. He kept watching the stars. Because he's like you, he said finally. Survived something terrible, and never let it turn him into a monster. They waited in silence, both of them listening to the ticking of the power core, the only sound left inside the dying outpost. Then, a soft hum came from the east sky, at first like a whisper, then like a heartbeat. Kiri's ears perked up. She stepped forward, tail swaying slowly. There, she pointed. Jace smiled. A glowing blue light moved between the clouds, sleek, wide-winged, and built for speed. It was not a military ship, not a Dominion craft. It was freedom. But their smile didn't last long, because from the north came fire. Red beams cut through the sky like angry scars. 3 enemy ships roared into view, faster, sharper, newer. They followed the signal. Kiri growled. They want to stop us before we get off this world. Jace stood up, slammed a button on his wristpad. The auto turrets on the old outpost rose from the snow. Rusty but ready. If they want to fight, he said, loading his rifle. Then we'll give them one worth remembering." The blue ship came lower, preparing to land. But the enemy opened fire first. Explosions lit the trees. Fire kissed the ice. Jace ran to the control panel inside and shouted over the radio, "Captain Solon, keep your ship moving. We'll meet you in the clearing." The voice replied with a rough laugh, "You always find trouble, Jace. I'm coming in hot. Get your tail to the dust zone." Kiri turned to him. "There's no cover in the clearing. There's no time either," he replied. "Let's run for the stars." Together, they took off through the back door. The snow cracked under their feet. Kiri moved like a shadow. Jace followed her, dodging trees, ducking low as laser fire cut overhead. Enemy soldiers dropped from the sky in pods. Their armor glowed red, and their eyes burned like coals. They saw Kiri and shouted, "Target acquired, bring her back alive." She snarled, "No one owns me," and she charged, fast, low, impossible to aim at. She jumped and sliced through one soldier's helmet, sparks flying like fireworks. Jace threw a grenade behind her. The shockwave sent snow and fire into the air. It bought them a few seconds, enough to reach the edge of the ridge. The blue ship hovered there, doors open, engines screaming. Captain Solon waved them in, his long gray coat whipping in the wind. His ship wasn't big, but it looked like it had survived wars and won every one. Kiri leapt first, rolling inside. Jace jumped after her, landing hard as the ship began rising. The enemy soldiers opened fire. Lasers hit the side of the ship, cracking metal and shaking the hull. "Get us out of here!" Jace shouted, pulling the door closed. Captain Solon turned the ship skyward, and with one loud roar, they were airborne. The ground fell away. The fires below became stars behind them, and the enemy became dust. Inside the ship, Kiri sat breathing hard. Her face was dirty, her clothes torn, but her eyes were full of something new, wonder. Jace leaned against the wall, laughing softly through the pain. "We made it," he said. Solon looked back and smirked. "Who's the girl with claws?" Kiri stood slowly, walked to the front window. The stars stretched ahead, billions of them. She turned back and answered, "I'm no one's weapon. I'm not a number. My name is Kiri." And as the stars opened before her, for the first time in her life she felt free. The stars looked different now, not cold, not endless, but full of paths, full of chances, full of dreams. Kiri stood near the front window of the ship, her hand pressed softly against the glass, watching as the blue planet shrank behind them. The same world that almost took her life and gave it back. Captain Solon leaned against the control panel, arms crossed. "She's been standing like that for a long time." He whispered to Jace, "She okay?" Jace smiled, a tired but real smile. "She's thinking." Maybe for the first time in her life. Solon nodded and left the cockpit, giving them space. Jace walked over and stood beside her. They didn't speak at first. Words weren't needed. "Just being there was enough after a while," Kiri said. "When I escaped the lab, I didn't expect to live another day." "I know," Jace said quietly. "But now you've got more than a day." She turned to him. "Do you think they'll keep chasing me?" He thought about it honestly before replying. "They'll try, but we'll stay ahead. There are places out there they can't follow. Places where people don't care what your DNA says." She let that sink in, then asked softly, "What do you want, Jace?" He blinked at her question. No one had asked him that in years. He'd always followed orders, fought battles, watched friends die, wanting things. That was dangerous, but now beside her, with nothing left but stars, he finally allowed himself to want. "I want peace," he said. "A real home, not an outpost. Not a bunker, just a place to wake up and not feel like the war is still inside." "Me?" Kiri looked at him, then back at the stars. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Can I be part of that?" Jace didn't answer with words. He reached out and gently held her hand. Not like a soldier, not like a savior, but like someone who simply cared. She squeezed back, and that was her answer later that day. Solon joined them with a datapad. "Found something," he said. "Might be what you're looking for." He tapped the screen, showing a small planet far off the grid. Warm climate, quiet forests, no Dominion activity for 5 light years. The locals were peaceful farmers. Traders, no scanners, no labs, no wars. Jace looked at Kiri. She nodded once. It wasn't paradise, but it was enough. The ship changed course, and as the engines hummed gently, a new future began to unfold. Months passed. The house they built was small, tucked between trees with red leaves and glowing bugs. Birds sang strange but lovely songs, and the sky turned violet at night. Jace grew a beard. Kiri learned to cook with herbs that smelled like honey and fire. They laughed more, fought less, no alarms, no lasers. Just stars above and soil below. Sometimes at night, Kiri still woke up sweating, haunted by cages and cold metal tables, but Jace would hold her until her breathing slowed. And when Jace had bad dreams of battles, she'd sit beside him and sing, in her native tongue, a song her sister used to hum. Together, they healed. One afternoon, while planting seeds in the garden, Kiri looked up and said, "I want to raise something that grows, not just survive anymore." Jace looked at her, and for the first time he imagined more, not just quiet. "But family, I do too," he replied. They didn't need to say the rest. It was in the way they smiled, in the way her tail wrapped softly around his leg, in the way their scars no longer defined them, from test subject to free woman, from broken soldier to quiet protector. They had become something the Dominion never planned for: human, alien, survivor, lover, home. And as the sun set behind the distant hills, Kiri whispered into the wind, "I never thought I'd have a future." Jace touched her shoulder and said, "You don't just have one, Kiri. You are mine." And under the stars that once watched her suffer, she finally smiled like someone who had everything.